do you consider retro then? Let's start with that. What is the definition of retro?
I cut it off after 16-bit.
Okay.
I let it slide with the 64 since we were talking to people like 10 years younger than us at that thing. But I feel like
Retro's become like a coin term. It's like a...
Yeah, it's a blanket term for just any of that style, but I don't agree. I think like everything up to Mortal Kombat I would call a retro game.
Like early 90s?
Right, well...
Early 90s and older then?
Right. I would say Master System's retro, NES is retro, and Genesis and Super Nintendo started retro. Then they got more into the slightly more modern take on games.
Mm-hmm.
I blame Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
And I love it, but
Yeah.
that was the turning point, I think.
So the hyper-violence...
I feel like... Because Mortal Kombat, don't get me wrong, it's great. I love it. But that was the first time, at least in my childhood, I ever saw, like... Here's a game
But what
that's
about
like...
Doom?
Well, Doom was PC, and not a lot of people played it, and
But they did put it on the Super
later.
Nintendo.
They put it on Super and Sega
and
later on.
And the 64.
But to me, Mortal Kombat was like... It's a game that is pretty good, and it's fun. It's not the greatest, but everyone loves it just because it looks nice.
So it's the graphics for you.
I think, yeah, once graphics got good, the gameplay didn't have to be as good.
Okay.
Look at Mega Man 7 versus 1 through 6. It's the most boring, but definitely the prettiest.
Mm-hmm. So, like, adventure games, or text adventure games, I should say.
That's retro.
Yeah, that's pretty retro.
No
That's as purely retro as it gets.
Right. I used to play this one on my old 486. That was very, very engaging. I'd be at it for hours at a time, and no graphics. It's all just... And they're hardly games, honestly. They're kind of a novel where you have to figure out how to turn the page, but...
More like an interactive story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what they've gone back to now. I mean, like, God of War is, to me,
cutscene after cutscene
exactly.
after
It's
cutscene.
a stone's throw away from just being a movie.
Yeah.
And it was fun, like the first one anyway, but that was enough. I didn't bother with 2 or 3 or any of those.
The third was the only one I played.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it, but...
They were okay, but I think they were way overhyped.
They definitely don't deserve the recognition they get. And Sony kind of turns to Kratos as their Mario now, and that's kind of a shame. Like,
yeah, it's a little weird because I actually remember hearing something recently, I didn't know this, that like Sony had said something to Naughty Dog when they were working on the Uncharted series,
mm-hmm.
when they were first doing like the ideation stage. They were actually going to do like a Wizards and Warriors, like fantasy style game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, for the new generation, it's got to be gritty reality, and
exactly.
It's so sad.
And it's a shame because I don't like when they step on their creative toes like that. I mean, and it happens all the time in the industry. I mean,
because the people shelling out the money wanted a certain way.
Well,
to
not
make a quick
necessarily.
buck.
I mean, look at like Sands of Time. Prince of Persia did really well, the first one, and then they decided to badass it up a bit with Warrior Within, and that one was pretty lame. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
Officially, yeah.
I used to wear like little boys like Pokemon shirts because
You were all into anime and games and whatnot.
Yeah. I was all into anime and stuff and video games.
Yeah, and we were in the same science class.
And we rode the same bus.
And I came home from school once, and my sister was home, and TV was on, and Pokemon came on. And I'm like, yeah, this chick in my class is wearing a Pokemon shirt today, and my sister's like, oh yeah, I think I know her, and we met because my sister hooked us up after Pokemon brought us together.
Pretty much his sister came up to me saying, hey, my brother thinks you're hot. I'm like, oh, who's your brother? And he was this tall, like, skinny, mysterious goth kid. And he would sit in class and draw pictures all day. And I'm like, oh, who is this mysterious dude?
But, yeah, Pokemon
brought us together.
One of our, not our first date, our, like, second date, if you can call it a date. I just went to her house and we played Soul Calibur because I didn't have a Dreamcast yet. And it's wonderful. I almost dumped you right there because you didn't have Sonic.
Sorry.
So, with the when you guys were at the festival thing where I met you, is that something you guys do a lot of, sort of like video game related crafts and stuff like that, or?
Yeah,
we've gone to other shows, and the one we met at CCAG, that was our second time going.
Our first time working at it, though.
And our first time working at it and buying and selling and trading with people.
But yeah, the crafts. As an artist, you draw inspiration from what you grow up with, and I was raised by video games, so that's what I draw mostly, I suppose.
Yeah. So you guys, like, tell me more about that. Like, you're an artist. You do crafts, stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, this was pretty much just. She signed us up for the table because she works at a lot of conventions, and I was concerned we wouldn't have enough actual games to sell, so that's when we started making the magnets and the buttons and the pictures and paintings and whatnot, thinking like, well, maybe someone will want these. And I was shocked that within the first few minutes we were pretty much sold out of magnets. So I generally made the ones that I liked at first, so I was making like the R-Type ship and Alex Kidd and that kind of thing, and most people didn't care, so I was like, all right, I gotta make some Mega Mans and all that, just stuff I knew would sell, and I mean, I love Mega Man, but...
And a lot of friends will say, oh, hey, can you make me so-and-so?
Right.
Can you make me Link with the purple outfit? Or...
Yeah, Link with his pink hair from Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
My one buddy is really good at Donkey Kong 3, so for his birthday I made him a Stanley. But...
Okay, I don't get the reference.
Stanley, the Bugman.
Oh, that's the character's name.
Yes,
okay.
It's not Mario.
I thought you said Stan Lee.
Oh, no. I should have made him a Stanley.
That'll be your next project.
Right. When we did Kitsune Con, I was, same thing, concerned that it would just look a little bland with just TVs and consoles, so we started making these cardboard cutouts of retro game characters to hang up around the table.
But done in his art style.
Well, I didn't want to just directly copy them, so I made like a Bomberman and Bonk and...
So what is it for you guys that makes old video games so interesting as opposed to newer ones?
They're harder. They're a lot more challenging.
A lot of them you can't save. It's like you pretty much have to try to beat them in one sitting.
And it's not just that. I feel like... And there are some new games that kind of go back to that, but a lot of older games I think were more about timing, quick reflexes, figuring out a pattern. A lot of it was just taking a shot in the dark. I mean...
Sometimes they wouldn't even, like, tell you certain things.
Right.
You had to figure them out on your own.
The original Legend of Zelda, you've got the entrance to level 7. You need to play the flutes to drain the pond. They don't tell you that. You just kind of have to figure it out, and everyone does. Eventually you sort of guess, I have this flute, I didn't have it before, must have something to do with it. Actually, I've been going through the process of trying to get as far as I can without taking a sword in that game, so...
Yes, the no sword run.
You're right. Eventually you need it. I mean, I don't think you can kill a Gleeok without a sword, so... Eventually you'll... of course you can't kill Ganon without a sword. But.
With the old games, there was such a big importance with points. Getting the highest score, getting the most points.
Well, I still do that. I mean, especially now...
Not always. Well,
with the online
Xbox
leaderboards
Live,
and stuff, I think sharing scores is better than it's ever been, because your friends can't lie about it anymore. You can't go to school and say, hey, yeah, man, I beat that last week, because they can go online and check to see if they really did. Like, you would have gotten the achievement if you had, liar. But,
right.
But back in those days, too, you could also, like, take a Polaroid of your high score.
Mail it to Activision and get a Pitfall patch.
Send it in.
They should bring that back. Activision totally has the money.
They should.
But do they have the heart anymore?
No. It's not the same Activision.
Right.
Most of them aren't. I mean, like, Atari is not Atari anymore. They just use the name.
Didn't another company buy them out?
Yeah, Infogram, I think.
Yeah, so they're really not the same anymore. It's
most of them are, and it's a shame. Ubisoft or EB or however the hell that's pronounced, they seem to be going that route now, which it's disappointing because they did some really great stuff with like Beyond Good and Evil and the first 3 Raymans and the very first Raving Rabbids. Then they went a little overboard with it, and now all they do is an annual Assassin's Creed, and it's just getting boring.
Mm-hmm. And those weird like baby games on the DS. And
I don't count those.
I try not to count those as games.
Like they said on Homestar, that's more of a video goings on because there's no actual game involved.
Video goings on. I like that phrase.
Yes.
We've borrowed that phrase a lot.
But yeah, I think the old games, they're just.
There's a certain charm to them,
in addition to being more challenging, it's like...
They had all the bleeps and blips and the cool sound effects. And
yeah, and I mean, it's cool.
You had to use your imagination a little more.
True, like, especially with Atari games. Zoe, you be quiet.
Sorry, my cat's a loudmouth. I could go lock him up in the other room.
It's good, it's fine.
I like the orchestrated soundtracks, and the graphics, look nice, but it's just kind of, to me it's surprising. You would think that with the increase in technology and the huge amounts of data they'd have, you wouldn't have games that you can beat in 6 hours, but that's what everything is now. I mean, like games like Heavenly Sword, where you pop it in and by the time the afternoon's over, you've already beaten it all the way through. Like, where's the fun?
Just by mashing the buttons, and then
glad I spent $60 on that.
How many cutscenes?
Yeah.
I mean, there are games. There are Skyrim and
right.
Yeah, still exist, right?
The new Donkey Kong Country, I think, is.
Oh, that game is hard.
It's a great example. It's really hard. It's like the hardest one they've ever done.
It took us like an hour just to beat that one minecart level,
and
we were cussing it out the whole time.
Yeah, that's the best part about video games. You love them, but then there are points where you just can't stand them. But that's where they got you by the balls. You keep playing, even though you're getting pissed off.
They get you
ready
hooked.
to start breaking things.
Yeah.
But. I see no difference between like dedicating a room of your house to video games and the people who have their man caves full of like, Cleveland Browns or
sports,
or football helmets or baseball memorabilia or whatever.
Or the little ladies that collect like M&Ms.
M&M people or miniatures or teddy bears, whatever. It's all just.
Everyone has their own thing that they like to collect.
I mean, life is boring. You might as well make it interesting.
Yeah, sure.